What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. And this one kind of caught me off guard because I really wasn't sure that this band was still around anymore, and that is namely due to some stuff that I'm going to go into. But anyway, I'm going to go over the latest offering from Bodyfarm, Ultimate Abomination. So this also comes out the 24th of February on Edged Circle Productions. This band formed in 2009 in the Netherlands. This is their 5th album overall, and here's where I get into why I wasn't sure they were going to be around anymore. This is the first album without their founding member, Thomas Walters, bassist, guitarist, one of their principal songwriters, who sadly died of cancer in 2019. He was only 31 years old, which is just fucking horrible. My heart still goes out to the fans, the family, everyone on that one. That is such a horrible thing to go through. And during this time, he continued working on all things Bodyfarm too. In fact, I went over their last album, 2019's Dreadlord, and I really dug that album. I actually went out and got The Coming Scourge not too long after that, and this is just straight up old school death metal, very much in the vein of other bands from the Netherlands, namely Pestilence, Asphyx, Hail of Bullets, and even some bands outside of that sphere like Jungle Rot and, of course, the mighty Bolt Thrower. Now, I believe the only other original member of this band is Bram Hilhorst. He actually came on in 2009, but after their first EP or demo. The rest of the band are very recent acquisitions as early as, I want to say, last year, maybe 2021. Since Thomas was the vocalist, one of the major changes that I noticed was the new vocalist, Ralph de Boer of the band Deadhead, which is a vicious fucking death thrash band from the Netherlands. And vocally, this is definitely very different than Thomas's delivery. Thomas had like this just giant roar of a vocal. Like it was very low, like he would get some higher screams. Very comparable to Peter Tägtgren, I would say, in a lot of respects. But Ralph has this feral scream. It's very dramatic. It's a lot of like shrieking and changing levels, and I don't know, like he adds a certain tenacity to this, and tenacity is kind of what this comes out with right away. The last album, Dreadlord, was very just meat and potatoes, but also very melody driven. There was a lot of epic melodies, a lot of big hooks, kind of comparable to Hypocrisy in a lot of ways too, but maybe like a little bit more just straightforward, just kind of like on the nose, stick with, you know, the tried and true formula of old school death metal and maybe deviate into melodic territory every now and then. This album, however, feels more aggressive from the rip. The opening track, Torment, comes in with just guns fucking blazing, big fucking thrashy chuggy riffs. The production here is definitely a lot different too. Mainly it's more just guitar forward, and the guitar tone really snarls, almost bordering on that HM2 Swedish buzzsaw tone that I fucking love so much. There's definitely a bigger thrash feel on some of these like faster tracks, partially due to the fact that Ralph's vocals definitely fit that style. I mean, you know, check out Deadhead if you don't believe me there. But this album opens up with just killer fucking riffs, good machine gun chugs, galloping D beat, occasional periodic blast beats. It's a good pace hitter for a good chunk of the stuff you're going to get in here, like namely songs like Blasting Tyranny, Carving Repugnance, and Soul Damnation. Those songs have very straightforward, like kind of death thrash sections. Again, kind of similar to Deadhead, but a lot of this is more akin to just like kind of meat and potatoes, old school death metal. Find a good riff, stick with it, and just kind of dry hump it into submission. And for the most part, this is kind of a fast-paced album, though I do love it when they get slower and groovier. The song, The Swamp, is possibly my favorite track on here. Notably more brooding, slower, kind of doomy. Actually, it's the song that probably sounds the closest to Asphyx out of all of them. It is just a monster of a song, driven by some cool syncopated chugs. The slower pace at this point in the album, which is like the midpoint of the album, is a good break from a lot of the stuff that was in the front half of the album, which it kind of sticks to the D-beat formula a little bit much, but hearing them slow down, letting the riffs really breathe, there's more, again, like a sinister atmosphere. It actually opens up with like creepy cellos, like a cello harmony, and it really sets the mood. There isn't a tremendous amount of like extra atmospheric stuff in here, so it was kind of cool to hear them kind of establish a mood before going into this track, and then this track just absolutely fucking crushing you. In between the lumbering chugs on the song, you get some really good tremolo riffs, very similar to like Morbid Angel, like it has that sinister edge to it. But there's also a lot of melody peppered in the end, and melody is still a big part of this, though I don't think it is as big as, say, as it was on, like, Dreadlord. This album definitely pushes more towards the aggressive side and the more, like, dark, sinister side than, say, Dreadlord did. Dreadlord had some more epic, soaring harmonies on here. This, they sound more, like, cold and sinister. And the more epic sounding moments in here are a little bit more minimalized, probably just for the sake of just making sure that this comes across as a very heavy album. Because part of me thinks that, you know, after Thomas's death and choosing to go on with the band, I feel like they really wanted to come out swinging and reestablish the brand and everything with a serious, heavy album. And I would say for the most part, it absolutely does that. But they didn't want to fully abandon the melodic hooks, because the melodic hooks with this band are usually really good. This band doesn't necessarily do a lot of solos, but the thing they do really well, and it's all over this album and kind of all over their body of work, is harmonies. Lots and lots of guitar harmonies, whether they're just like epic, slow, doomy harmonies, again, more associated with aspects, or, you know, tremolo harmonies that occasionally take on a slightly more blackened sound. While Blasting Tyranny is almost more of a death thrash song, it's very aggressive, very much in your face. It does shift over to like these little blackened sections with like cold tremolo riffs and blast beats. And Sacrilege of the Fallen is ambitious enough to open up almost as a black metal song, like a mid-tempo sort of like stomping song that you would kind of hear from like, I don't know, Immortal, maybe even Satyricon. And for a more meat and potatoes death metal band, that adds like a touch of atmosphere and a little bit more of like, you know, broadness to their sound, because, I mean, they have a very particular wheelhouse. They really deviate from it, but honestly, it's one of those bands that they really don't need to, because within that wheelhouse, they execute their sound really well. Two songs that really show that, in fact, I would say, are Carving Repentance and Empire of Iniquity. I think these are two giant standout songs, and these two really show off something that I think some of the songs might have been missing on here, and that is dynamics. Granted, the formula is, well, arguably simple. Again, it's meat and potatoes death metal. There are, you know, a lot of repeated riffs, not a lot of like, you know, proggy flourishes or anything like that. Like, not a lot of like extra seasoning, but there is some. And these two songs actually kind of break it up a little bit. Carving Repentance opens up incredibly strong. It's got a great D beat to it. Machine gun riffs, like it is driving. The vocals are fucking just nasty as hell. But it also does something that not a lot of the other songs do, is switch it up when it comes down to like a chorus. It goes into like a more double time sort of like bolt thrower groove in the chorus, which a lot of these songs, if they're in a thrashy mode, they kind of hang on to that thrashy mode or that faster pace throughout the entire song. Like, they don't really break it down as often. But this song, while it does repeat certain riffs, it has some really cool character to it. There is an awesome little section of isolated guitars before the breakdown comes in, and you're expecting more of, again, like a bolt thrower style sort of like groove-a-thon there, but it shifts into flat out death doom. Like, it is one of the heaviest moments on this album, and it really wasn't expected, like, because they slow it down to a fucking crawl. The vocals have a much slower cadence. They're kind of carrying out more. And then even caps off the song with some very epic lead harmonies. They're really fucking good. This song actually has like a lot of cool elements to it. It has a really cool flow. It builds up tension a little bit too. The same thing with Empire of Iniquity. The song is chuggy, nice and mid-tempo. They kind of forego the D beat and, you know, skip being thrashy. They kind of just hang on this mid-tempo groove. And I like how this song builds up, like right out of the gate. Big, giant fucking riffs, like kind of like single chords. You get a nice war drum sort of snare roll. It builds up the tension. And again, a lot of this is about like the tension just sort of explodes and then you're fucking in it. But this one kind of slow burns you, or like medium burns you. Like, it still burns you, that's the main point, but it actually takes its time to kind of well up the excitement a bit. The riffs are catchier than hell in the song. They're very powerful. There's a nice little melodic part towards the end too. Again, there's a lot of cool shifts in the song, but they're still doing sort of like, you know, the old school death metal thing where there's not a tremendous amount of parts to it, but they're adding seasoning where they can and still staying within their comfort zone. And comfort zones are kind of an issue, both being outside of them and being within them possibly too much on here. I brought up Sacrilege of the Fallen as a good example of them employing some black metal in terms of the atmosphere. And it's a good song. You know, it's a solid song. It starts off really well. Again, it feels more cold and more sinister. And then towards the end, it just kind of takes a hard shift back into, well, what they do usually. It's kind of more like old school death metal, a little bit thrashy. And I feel like they kind of left something on the table there. There was definitely more to explore with that, because I think that song really stood out. Like with The Swamp being a more slow, brooding kind of death doom song, they stuck with it, and the results were absolutely fantastic. This one, they kind of just went back to their main wheelhouse, which isn't bad at all, but again, I feel like there could have been more that could have been done with that. But the one that really stood out to me that just felt kind of odd and out of place in this album was the song The Wicked Red. It has almost a more death and roll feel. Like, you hear this opening riff, it sounds more like a death metal cover of like a Motorhead song, or even like, you know, Wolverine Blues era Entombed. Like, it's kind of got this bouncy sort of rock riff to it. It's really kind of fun, but it feels out of place considering the first two were like real good pace setters, and this one just feels like, I don't know, like almost sort of like a bonus track. Like, this was another idea that was kind of outside of the realm of what Bodyfarm usually does. It's just sort of an odd song, and the fact that kind of halfway through it transitions into, you know, more of that kind of comfortable bolt thrower pocket that, you know, they definitely like to hang out in. It kind of tells me that it was still like kind of a half idea, like they really didn't fully commit to like doing a full-on death and roll song, but also at the same time doing kind of half of one and then like a more groovy death metal song at the back half of it. Feels like, you know, one of those ideas should have just kind of pushed the other one out, and I mean, honestly, it probably just should have been the groovy death metal one. And I do think there are some sharper transitions on Soul Damnation where it kind of shifts from just being like very aggro to being very epic. And I don't know, it doesn't quite gel as well, but honestly, overall, this was pretty good. And for a band that has gone through what they have gone through, I fucking salute them for fucking getting back out there and putting out another album. So overall, I'm gonna give this 3.5 stars. I dig this. This is pretty solid. There's definitely, you know, some kind of growing pains considering what they've gone through and, like, you know, trying to get back out there, reestablish themselves. You know, that's an arduous process, but for the most part, I think they fucking nailed it on here. I just think the more dynamic songs really stood out to me more than, you know, some of the more standard fare or the ones that are like slightly more experimental. The Swamp, Carving Repentance, and Empire of Iniquity are an amazing three-piece song little run there. That is kind of the heart of the album, and I would love to hear more like that. I think those songs definitely have all that old school death metal quality, but there's a lot of cool dynamics in there. Lots of great melodies. The guitar harmonies in this entire album, I think, are absolutely fantastic, and actually kind of take the place of any need for solos in here. Like, the solos, again, are minimal, but it's the guitar harmonies that really make these songs stand out. Like, they really kind of drive the hooks. Ralph does a fantastic job on vocals. I think he's a good fit. I think there's probably a fair amount of adversity when it comes down to putting out an album after a longtime member and friend dies, but I think they did a really solid job, and I look forward to hearing more in the future. Again, if you're a fan of bands like Asphyx, Halo Bullets, Bolt Thrower, Jungle Rot, even throw in Pestilence too, definitely check this out. This is a pretty fucking gnarly listen. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down there at thrallsmetal.com. We will eventually reload on some merch, and we're figuring out a better merch delivery system, but we're getting there. But again, if you want to help us out on Patreon, that is where you do that. And Denver Death Fest coming up, God, man, relatively soon. April 20th through the 22nd in Denver, Colorado. 3 days of fucking extreme metal. 3-day passes are $60. There are a ton of bands. We have a full lineup now. We might add 1 or 2. I don't know. Again, I don't know all the particulars because I just kind of run the day-to-day shit at Thralls. But we're going to be there. Looking forward to just hanging out and BSing with a bunch of metalheads and fucking metal bands and, you know, doing all sorts of crazy shit. We hope you guys can make it out. And if you guys are interested in tickets, down below, click the link. That is where to find out that information. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. I know, the awkward thank you part, this is necessary. I have to do it. I know, it's weird, and I can already sense you fucking turning off the video, but know that I'm always eternally thankful to everyone that has helped us get as far as we have. It's just amazing to fucking do this, and it is all because of you guys. So I'm gonna keep this one relatively short because I already feel the waves of awkward rolling over my body. So thank you once again, and we will catch you later.